Hello and welcome. I'm Amritanshu Rai and you're watching Law of the Land on Raj Sabha TV. Today we bring to you the Pesticide Management Bill, which seeks to regulate every aspect of the pesticide business. To discuss the issue, I have with me Raju Shroff, Chairman, Crop Care Federation, and also Sunita Narayan, Director General, Center for Science and Environment, and Krishnabir Chaudhary, President, Bharatiya Krishak Samaj. Now for the headlines. The Pesticides Management Bill seeks to minimize contamination of agricultural produce with pesticide residue. The bill proposes severe action like misbranding, cancellation of registration and cancellation of license if violation takes place. The bill also proposes fine up to 5 lakh rupees and imprisonment up to 2 years. Pesticides used for non-agricultural purposes are excluded from the definition. The Parliamentary Standing Committee has recommended inclusion. The Pesticides Management Bill seeks to regulate and manage all aspects of pesticide business relating to control of pests in agriculture. This will include manufacturing, sale, import and export. The bill also seeks to minimize contamination of agricultural produce with pesticide residue. The term pesticide includes weedicide and fungicides along with insecticides.
According to Consumer Voice and NGO, the amount of pesticide used in eatables in India is about 750 times the European standards. According to the World Health Organization, harmful pesticide can cause kidney damage, lung damage and cancer. The government is conscious of this trend and intends to replace the insufficient Insecticide Act by a new and comprehensive legal framework to regulate the business of pesticides.
इंसेक्टिसाइड एक्ट जो 1968 में बना और उसको वकील क्या, फार्मर क्या, डिपार्टमेंट क्या, इंडस्ट्री क्या, सबको मालूम था कि बिल में कौन से एक्ट में क्या क्लॉज है. ये नया बिल ला करके केवल 2 चीजें हैं, ये 5 इयर्स प्रोटेक्शन और स्ट्रिंजेंट एक्शन जो स्पूरियस पेस्टिसाइड के लिए, वो अमेंडमेंट से भी लाया जा सकता था.
The bill defines a pesticide as a substance used to destroy or control the spread of pests in agriculture produce or animal feed. It sets up the framework with which a pesticide can be classified as a substandard or superiors. The bill establishes a central pesticide board to advise the government on matters related to pesticide regulation. It also set up a committee to register all the pesticides. It clearly states that no pesticide will be registered unless tolerance limits forest residue on produce are approved under the Food Safety and Standards Law. The bill establishes a system to grant licenses to manufacturers, distributors and retailers without which they will not be allowed to function. According to the proposed law, pesticide inspectors will be appointed to inspect facilities and collect pesticide sample while pesticide analysts shall test the samples collected. Based on their report, action will be contemplated.
Agriculture is a state subject, so why shouldn't pesticide be a state subject? Shouldn't the states should have control over what pesticides they use, how much is allowed, how much is not allowed, whether they want to ban a particular pesticide, because all these pesticides are all these states have different ecosystems. So if the states have different ecosystems, they have different crop structure, they have different demands for certain pesticides, and so on and so forth. So a state should have the right to decide whether they want a particular pesticide or not.
According to the proposed law, producers, stockists, distributor, retailer or pest control operator will have to disclose to the farmer the expected performance of the pesticides, and if it fails to keep up of its promise, the farmer will be able to claim compensation under the provisions of the Consumer Protection Law. Under the Pesticide Management Bill, the farmers can get their compensation under the Consumer Protection Act. But the expert view is that this provision should be included within the bill only, so that the farmers can get their compensation without any trouble. With camera person Nitin Gupta, Aruna Thakur, Rajya Sabha TV.
The tolerance limit for pesticides are to be specified according to the provisions of the Food Safety and Standards Act, but the relevant provisions are in the process of being notified. The question to you is, Mr. Shroff, first question is, I mean, is this bill, do you see this bill as pro-Indian industry or pro-MNC?
Well, when bill was formed, we felt that pesticide management bill is very necessary. It will help the industry, it will help the farmer, and everything will be smooth. But some of the clauses which are put about giving a protection, data protection, which industry had objected. And even in data protection, there are some loophole by which instead of 20 years patent, 5 years data protection, more data protection is written, clause is not clear. And the industry has taken up the case with Member of Parliament, and we hope things will be sorted out. But ultimately we think it should help the industry and more it should help Indian farmer. Our aim is to help Indian farmer by supplying good quality pesticide at a very reasonable price.
The question to you is that a big concern? You put a clause into this amendment, into this management new bill, you call pesticide and management bill, and you say that the tolerance levels will be as per the Food and Safety Act, which is yet to be notified, and when it will happen, no one has a clue.
No, in fact, Amritanshu, just to correct this, the rules under the Food and Safety Standards Act have now been notified.
Okay.
Okay. We have been pushing for them, and that has happened. So we now have a provision under the FSSAA
Right.
to register, to set the tolerance limits. Okay. The most important thing that we think is important for us to raise is that till now, we are not denying that there is a use of pesticide. We know that farmers need to use pesticides, but there is a trade-off between pesticides and nutrition. You want to make sure that you can use pesticides in a way that they are safe for consumption, which means that you need to set the limit, which is the tolerance limit. It's also called the MRL, maximum residue limit, which is allowed in any crop. Now that is set under the Health Ministry, under the FSSAI. The big issue that we have is that even though this is a very big step ahead, and in fact the Joint Parliamentary Committee had directed the government to amend the Insecticide Act and to bring the tolerance limits as a mandatory provision, we don't think it goes far enough. And the reason it doesn't go far enough, because even now, the fact is the tolerance limit is set on the basis of each crop. So you are told that you can register this pesticide for use on a crop. But the use on a crop is only part of the labeling requirement under this bill. Now this basically means that it is the farmer which has the problem. If the farmer's crop is found that they have pesticides above the maximum limit, the farmer is in trouble, not the pesticide company. Okay. So we are basically saying that the onus of this must lie with the pesticide company.
Do you think it favors the industry more than it favors the
Well,
farmer?
the chemical science model were adopted by us. If we remember the history, in 1968, Dr. M.S. Swaminathan said in the Indian Science Congress itself that we are going to chemical science model. There is a danger. I am talking about 1968. That there is a danger that there will be a side effect of pesticides. Can be the number of cancer cases will increase. Strictly, directly he hit that cancer, allergic problem and other problems.
That is established, sir.
No, it is established.
Is it pro-industry, pro-farmer?
Which one?
The
This
bill.
Bill is for MNCs.
Yes.
Good
And what is
point.
it? What
I'm
is
glad
it
you're
that,
Because
what is the clause?
I'm very fair. I raised this issue before the Parliamentary Standing Committee also. That why we are giving the data protection
Good
under intellectual property regime. Already they have for 17 years protection at international level. We should not give for the more. Additional provision we are giving for 5 years.
Exactly.
Why the Indian farmer should suffer? This is important point. I'm not the producer, we are the consumer. Therefore, we know that how the Emamectin benzoate was sold at the cost of 10,000 rupees per kg on cotton.
Right, sir.
And after completion of 3 years, Amritanshu, you will surprise, the product come down up to 3,000 rupees per kg. It means that monopoly of a product controlled by a company, they will always...
What is the essential difference? What is the essential difference between...
Second point I am
Yes,
coming.
yes.
About the pesticide residue. There is a problem of agriculture extension department. There is no extension work is going on in states. Nobody is going from KVKs to advise the farmers that if you are spraying this pesticide today, you should not harvest crop for a week or 10 days because there is a question of half-life of that salt. Therefore, the farmer today he is spraying to protect his crop, and day after tomorrow or after 2 days he is picking his crop and taking the market. This is a big problem of pesticide residue.
We'll come to it now. It's time for us to head into a break. When we come back, we'll talk about the proposed punishments in the bill. Welcome back. The bill proposes severe action like misbranding, cancellation of registration and cancellation of licenses if violation takes place. The bill also proposes fine up to 5 lakh rupees and imprisonment up to 2 years for violations.
The proposed law enables the state governments and the central government to appoint pesticide analysts and pesticide inspectors. The pesticide inspector will be empowered to enter and search and seize records. The pesticide inspector will be a key officer who will have execution powers.
Most of the developed nations like Brazil, US and even Canada, they are now putting the Pesticides Act under the Ministry of Environment and Forest. So it is a regulation of issue considering the health and environment aspects. Where in India it is still with the Agriculture Ministry, and which is more favoring pesticides industries and promoting chemical pesticides.
According to the bill, the penalty for the first-time offender ranges between 25,000 to 1 lakh rupees and jail of up to 1 year. But if the offence is repeated, then the punishment will increase. For subsequent offences, fine will range between 1 lakh rupees to 5 lakh rupees and jail up to 2 years. The proposed law also makes the offence committed for the first time compoundable with fine.
डाटा प्रोटेक्शन पेस्टिसाइड मैनेजमेंट बिल में 5 इयर्स के लिए दिया गया है, लेकिन इसके सेक्शन 12(6) और 12(7) को रीड करेंगे तो हमें लगेगा कि ये एवरग्रीनिंग है, 5 साल का नहीं है, ये एवरग्रीनिंग है.
The Pesticide and Management Bill empowers the centre to decide whether or not to ban a pesticide permanently. According to the experts, it will be better if a mechanism is created to involve the state governments in such decision making, especially relating to punishments and compensation in case of violations. One of the major loopholes in the Pesticide Management Bill is that it doesn't talk about any education process and training to the farmers for the proper use and disposal of the pesticides. With camera person Nitin Gupta, Aruna Thakur, Rajya Sabha TV.
The bill does not specify penalties for pesticide inspectors or analysts who misuse their powers. The Standing Committee has recommended that penalties be imposed on such government officers along the lines of similar provisions in the Drugs and Cosmetic Act 1940 or the Food Safety and Standards Act 2006. The next point I want to ask you is, in case the crop produce of the farmer is found to have pesticide residue, then who should be blamed for it?
Well, if the pesticide residue is more, it can be created only by misuse of pesticide. If a farmer has used pesticide properly according to rule, there will not be residue. And if there is residue, of course, we should take action. But I am sure that a pesticide residue before registration, full test, full data
I
is
get
generated.
it. So the pointed question is, sir, should it be the responsibility of the farmer if the crop has pesticide residue, or should it be the responsibility of the pesticide manufacturer?
No, it cannot be the responsibility of pesticide manufacturer, because manufacturer has tested, field trials are done, university has done, tested it, scientific research institute has found, and there is no problem if, and thousands of farmers are using it, there is no residue. If one farmer finds a residue, then we should investigate why it was residue, how much pesticide he used per acre.
And in a situation like this, who should be penalized?
The farmer should be penalized because it is not a fault of the manufacturer.
Right.
If you find the pesticide formulation had a fault, it had made a mistake, then even industry can be better.
Right.
Sometimes they, in formulation, they put a wrong ingredient, then it can create. So that should be found out.
Sir, Mr. Krishnbir Chaudhary ji, do you think the executing power has been given to these two people, especially the inspector at the state level and the analyst whose report is going to form the basis of any further litigation? These two people, do they need to be held accountable, and do we need to bring in provisions which will ensure that they perform their duties with accountability?
Without fixing the accountability of lab analyst and inspector, there is no use of this bill at any cost. I ask from the Parliamentary Standing Committee also that it is must. Inspector will take the sample as per his wishes, as per his choice. If he is getting money from companies, then he will not took sample. He will took from those products they are not able to pay the money, and he will send that sample to state lab. They are not going to test. You see the condition of the laboratories in state government. No, nobody is going. Just they are asking for money. If you send the money, your sample is passed. Otherwise, your sample is failed. This is the working everywhere in every state. Therefore, I ask to Parliamentary Standing Committee that you have to fix the responsibility of chief analyst of the laboratory and the inspector. Otherwise, no control, there will be no check and balance of spurious and substandard pesticide. Because we took the 26 sample. When Parliamentary Standing Committee asked me that we have to take the sample from market, we took 26, and out of 26, 21 were failed in Ministry of Chemical Fertilizer Laboratory. This is the condition, and nobody is going to ask.
I'll bring in Sunita Narayan. Ma'am, the point about the environmental aspect, does it meet your expectations as far as taking care of the environmental aspect?
No, in fact, frankly, this bill is a non-bill. Okay, there is nothing much different between this bill and the Insecticide Act. Okay,
except
so
for this
let us
5-year
be
thing.
very clear. Okay, in fact, what it does is only to perpetuate the problems that we have.
Yes.
And the problem we have today is that it is the farmer who is the user of the crop, of the pesticide, who is going to be fined by the inspector, who is going to come and say कि तुमने ये इस्तेमाल किया, तुमने ज़्यादा इस्तेमाल किया, क्यों इस्तेमाल किया, and you can understand what the poor farmer is going to have to deal with.
Right.
You're talking about harassment of the weakest now.
Yes.
Instead of making it very clear that if any pesticide is found which does not, for which the MRL has not been set, or for which even the label does not exist, then the company is hauled up, should be blacklisted.
Right.
If any spurious pesticide is found, then it is the company which is
Not only
blacklisted.
that, ma'am, also the awareness level of the farmer.
No,
Only if the farmer knows about
we have to
these
be very
things.
clear that awareness is something that we are both in agreement with, has to be built. But that is because you have a non-existent extension service. As a farmer today, if I want to buy something, who do I go to for advice? To the local seller of the pesticide or the seed. He is the man who tells me कि अब लगाओ, कब लगाओ, कैसे लगाओ.
Guide.
सरकार है कहाँ?
Krishnbir ji, they have said very clearly that the penalty level is going to be this much, registration cancellation, licenses cancellation, we will do this, we will do that. Almost everything that they have said is there in the bill. Okay? But effectively, this one provisional license or registration, what impact will it have on the end user, on the farmer?
I ask to the government, as well as the Secretary Agriculture and Secretary Chemical Fertilizer, that if some companies are selling the substandard pesticides in the market to farmers, who is the responsible? Who will take action? Government should take action. And they are not ready to take action against the companies. Why not? It's not an easy question. It's a very tough. A small consumer, a small farmer, how can fight against a big company? And there is a question of, in India, still we are using 175 molecules, and more than 500 new molecules is waiting to introduce in this country to suck the blood of farmers. This is the aim of this bill. And why the double standard our bureaucracy is using through this bill, why they are protecting the complete rights of MNCs, minimum 5 years. And again they will change their new data, new data. Every
And
day
get
they will
extension.
twist, and our
And patent
bureaucracy
extension.
will dance on the tune of corporation.
Yes, ma'am.
Abhigyan, I want to make two short points here. One, I think the most important thing that we had demanded was that we want the right of state governments to be able to ban a pesticide. You know, the biggest issue in this country has been the issue of endosulfan
Yes.
in Kerala,
Yeah.
where there have been very, very severe health impacts that have been found. The weakness of this country is that we have not been able to hold that only three companies responsible for the deadly diseases of people over there. But also, we do not give the state government the right to ban it. So I think what the provision here is, it is not strong enough. The state government has the right to be able to decide,
Which is not included.
which is not included, to be able to ban it. And two,
On
I
that-
totally support the issue of data exclusivity, because government is saying in the case of drugs that we do not
Yes,
want
in
data
pharmaceutical
exclusivity.
sector,
And
pharmaceutical
yet
is not ready to
they are
accept the
saying
data
that we
protection.
want data protection.
Then
So
why
I think
it
let's
is-
be very clear. That provision has to go.
Right. On that note, it's time for us to head into a break. When we come back, we'll show you an interview with advocate Kailash Vasudev. Welcome back. My colleague Aruna Thakur spoke to senior advocate Kailash Vasudev and tried to understand what is new with this bill.
So tell us the major lacuna of this bill.
In this entire act, environmentalists, farmers, manufacturers, citizens are not a party to any of the advisory councils, boards or committees.
Is the government is promoting rather than restricting the pesticides by this new bill?
You are not going to promote or reduce pesticide usage. You are going to regulate pesticide. That is your purpose of this act. You must develop a system within our available system infrastructures to frame policies which are correct. For that, you don't need an act. You have industrial disputes, Industries Development Regulation Act, you have the old Insecticide Act, you have the Foreign Trade and Development Act. Policies of import and export are framed there. You can't use an act for this purpose of this kind. Prosecutions are under the Indian Penal Code, 1860, Section 284. The whole gamut of that chapter deals with morals and obligations of people. How in God's name are we going to have an individual system like this under an act which is a lift off of an act which you want to repeal?
Green Revolution had made its negative and positive impact on the agriculture. Now the farmer use a large amount of pesticides not knowing the quantity of the pesticides. Does this bill provide any provision for the quantity? How much the quantity should the farmers use? Or does any provision regarding the training to the farmers?
This act does not tell the farmer or make any provision for training the farmer on how to use a particular set of pesticides. It does not inform the environment users that there will be these emissions, this will be the impact. Don't use it for another product. It is only meant for cereals, it is only meant for vegetables, it is only meant for fruits, it is only meant for purposes of harnessing some portions of the land. You have got to have parameters laid down. The advisory board under Section 4 is not going to do this.
Pesticides registered under the Insecticide Act 1968 are automatically deemed to be registered under this bill. Tolerance limits have not been specified for some of these pesticides. Ma'am, the question, we'll begin with the compensation aspect. If a farmer is affected, Krishna Biji, the question is pointed to you. If the farmer is affected, he has to approach the consumer court.
Yes, good point.
But if the company which has been allowed to go scot-free, as ma'am has been stating, how do you ensure that the farmer who doesn't have the real strength to fight back such a huge MNC or a company and gets his right in the place if the pesticide doesn't work out well for him?
There should be a provision if the pesticide is not working properly or it's affecting the farmer's health. Company should be responsible, and there should be heavy penalty should be paid by the company. And the provision should we make in this bill?
the bill itself.
Without making that provision, how the farmer will be protected? What's the way to protect the crop, to protect the health? Both are involved.
On the states, ma'am, on the state. The states are nowhere part of the decision-making consultation or anything. It's only relating to the appointment of the inspector, where the state has got a limited role.
See,
he can appoint.
In the seed bill, one of the biggest flaws in the seed bill is that if a seed fails, okay, the farmer has absolutely
Go
no...
to consumer
court.
They've done the
There is
same
no-
here.
And the same has
So
been adopted.
let's be very clear.
What is the
What
use?
amazes me, Bir Singh ji, is this is being tabled by the Ministry of Agriculture. I mean, I would have understood if the Ministry of Heavy Industries was tabling this bill, okay? But the Ministry of Agriculture is there to protect the farmers of India.
Consultation
not
with
to
the states,
protect-
ma'am. Consultation with the
And the
states.
second issue, also in the seeds bill, also in the pesticide bill, is after all, the states have the sovereign right under the Constitution to discuss agriculture.
Yes.
You can't take out from the states all these powers and say these are being mandated centrally. The one power that the state must have is to protect the health of its people.
Right.
And I think
But the
this bill does
state-
not do it.
State has the right
Huh.
to issue the license to sell the product.
That is
Okay.
This is the state subject.
That is also
And they have the right to take the sampling. They have the right to punish the retailer.
So,
They can take the sampling
Okay.
from the manufacturing point also.
But
but that is
not
still a
good
very
enough.
small consolation.
Very small, very
Consolation compared to the big loopholes.
yes, big
On that note, sir, thank you, sir, and ma'am, for joining us on this discussion. It is time for us to end the show. You can email your suggestions and comments to law.rstv@gmail.com. You can also watch our shows on the YouTube. We will be back with a new issue and a new episode. Keep watching Raj Sabha TV.